So we've made it to August. That means today I'm going to stop and rank all 9 July new releases that I saw from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean and I love to talk about movies way too much. If you can relate, you're probably in the right place. Consider clicking that subscribe button. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of the July new releases that you saw. We're not going to agree. That's the fun part, that we can talk movies way too much down below in the comment section. Just don't be a jerk about it. One final thing before we get started. You can get a bunch of the shirts that I wear, including this one right here, or a coffee mug just like this, in my merch store. The link is down below in the description. With that said, let's get started. Coming in last place easily is Escape Plan 3: The Extractors. It's heartbreaking for me to put this film in last place because I love Sylvester Stallone. He's probably my favorite actor. I enjoyed the first Escape Plan film for what it was, and then the 2 sequels have been some of the most cynical cash grab films I have ever seen. Now, if you just saw a basic synopsis of the film, it would like sound like a pretty good direct-to-video movie, because you have to break into a prison to try and stop someone who's out for revenge, who's kidnapped some people. Oh, that sounds good. The cast has Stallone, Batista, David Sewa. There's a bunch of things about this on paper that look really good, but it's not that. It's not at all the movie that it should be. Even on a B-movie level, this is a cynical film. Because what they did was, they essentially made an Asian martial arts film that they could package and sell to Asia, but then they tried to put Stallone in it to tie it to the Escape Plan franchise. So there's sequences in this movie where there's this whole big, long martial arts fight scene in a building, and then the character that's kind of leading the scene gets knocked to the ground, and then Stallone appears only in close-up, that you see his hand reach out, and he shakes the hand of the guy on the ground, but they're never in frame together. Very clearly, Stallone was never in the same location as this other guy. They just shot him like in front of a green screen or in front of some random wall in close-up so that they could just cut it together, and the whole movie's like that. You go through the film, and kind of the main character's killed about halfway through the film, and it's done so poorly, I didn't even realize the person had died. I was watching the movie, I was like, oh, they're in danger. I hope the heroes can save the day and rescue that person. No, that's not what happened. The movie's just unbelievably poorly put together. Some of that is simply because they were intentionally trying to intercut in people. Dave Bautista's in the movie about 5 minutes, and it's literally, they shot him in like 2 or 3 locations. He's in a hangar, he's in like a bar, and then he's at the prison for just a few minutes. And he just shows up very briefly at single locations just so that they could cut together a few shots of Dave Bautista in the trailer. I mean, this sort of filmmaking is pretty grotesque to me, and that's what it is. So without question, this is the worst movie of July, and it's might be my least favorite movie the entire year. Coming in at number 8 is Midsommar. It actually pains me a good bit to put these 2 movies right next to each other, because whereas I believe Escape Plan 3 is just a cynical film to try and make money through marketing, Midsommar is an actual project that someone believed in, that they poured their heart and soul into, had an ambition for, and a lot of you loved it. A lot of you think that this is a special film, that the themes worked for you, the fact that it was different, everything about you loved it, and I want to fully respect that. That's why I wanted to sell this. Like, it really, I hate the fact that by the way this worked out, that this is right next to a film that I think, I mean, just on an artistic level, these are as polar opposite as you can get. But as for the movie Midsommar, for me, I absolutely respected the craft that was put into making the film. There's so many sequences where just you see someone walk from their living room into a bathroom, and the way it's shot, it transitions so smoothly into that person being on a plane going somewhere. It's so well thought out. The shocking images certainly stick with you. There's some themes woven throughout the entire film that are pretty kind of profound about relationships and things like that. The actual package here, the actual main storyline here, just didn't hook me in. I found myself pretty bored in the middle of it, and then once it kind of got to the third act when things started getting crazy, it just kind of, on certain ways, it kind of like strained too much credibility. When I first watched it, I kind of appreciated the foreshadowing of it, but then I was like, wait a minute, nothing that happened in the final 20 minutes surprised me because I put it all together, in which case that's a predictable movie. It's not foreshadowing's not supposed to make a movie entirely predictable, and that's the way I felt about this film. And so for some people that kind of connect with the artistic elements of a film and maybe the thematics of a film like this, you'll probably see it and like love it, and especially the technical side to it. I'm a lot more of a story kind of person, and the story here was the thing that was the weak one for me, and so it really held it back for me. Likewise, the depths of how far it goes with the shock imagery, the types of things people eat, that they do, that it shows in the final little into the film. Not the gore, I don't mind the gore, but some of the other stuff they went with that was just, I just don't know that you needed to go there. It'll stick with me. It's memorable. It's a story to tell people, but it's not something that made me go, oh yeah, they were so bold because they had people eat pubes. Like, wow, I mean, man, that's incredible that they did that. So this is a movie I totally respect if this is a movie that worked for you. And it's not like the director thought this was for everyone. This is a movie that was intended for specific people who love it, and some specific people just not going to click with them. I'm in the category I can respect it, but it's not a movie for me. Next up is Batman Hush. This bottom three is a very diverse set of films. So this is a direct-to-video Batman animated film that's an adaptation of the Batman Hush graphic novel. I've never read Batman Hush, so I'm just evaluating this based on as a film itself. And I'd say I enjoyed the basic idea of it. Central to it is very much kind of the relationship between Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle, Batman and Catwoman, which was really cool stuff to it. The big overall story, in theory, I really liked it. But the big problem for me, for almost all of these direct-to-video adaptations, is that I guess the producers or whatever just have it locked in. It has to be an hour and 15 minutes. It's like an hour and 20 minutes max. None of them are long. They either do 2 movies, in which case it's 2 hours and 40 minutes long, or it's an hour and 15 minutes long, and it's just not enough time to tell a story. So this movie it spends a lot of time on this romance. It has this whole mystery about who is Hush and everything Hush is trying to do, and part of Hush's plan involves all of Batman's rogues, almost all of Batman's rogues gallery. Superman shows up, Lex Luthor shows up for a little bit, Damian Wayne shows up, and I'm pretty sure Damian Wayne wouldn't have been in the original graphic novel, in which case it's just covering so much stuff, and you just can't do that in an hour and 15 minutes. So for me, when it had some big reveals of like who was going on here, what's the plan and everything, it was like, oh, on paper, like mentally, that's kind of interesting. But as a movie, it doesn't have the emotional punch that it's supposed to. It doesn't pay off the way it's supposed to because they didn't spend enough time elaborating on everything. So for me, this was a movie that just was kind of like, yeah, that kind of happened. Number 6 is Point Blank, another film from a totally different medium, as this is a Netflix original action, kind of buddy comedy a little bit, starring Frank Grillo and Anthony Mackie. And I enjoyed the genre, so this was a good enough action buddy film for me. It didn't break any new ground. It wasn't particularly memorable, but when I tune into a movie like this that's direct to Netflix or direct to video, this is kind of what I want them to be. This is kind of my level of expectation. It delivered the experience that I wanted, which is to say a couple of leads that are actors that I just kind of like, especially Frank Grillo. I love him in these action thriller type films. So he is just great to see in the film. The action's handled good enough. The comedy made me laugh enough. At the end of the day, it's a pretty generic action thriller. If this isn't your genre, it's not going to win you over. If you don't like these actors, there's probably not a good reason to check it out. But if you're someone that does like good direct-to-video action films, if you like throwback action comedies, I would say absolutely check this one out. It's worth the 2 hours of your time when you're just kind of like, hey, what should I watch right now? Let's put on Point Blank. Kicking off our top 5 is Crawl. This is a nice little thriller. It doesn't have big ambitions, but it delivers on what it promises. It actually has pretty good special effects for kind of the type of film that it is. So the basic premise is that there's a hurricane, a girl goes to check on her dad, and the two of them get stuck in the crawl space underneath their house with some alligators, which would be unfortunate. The movie just finds all of the little tensions that you can have, whether you're talking about water rising, alligators trying to eat you, or just the inherent nature of kind of the hurricane waters coming in. And so the movie's able to, like, while being very tight space, there's not a ton of things that you can do, but it keeps having a change of the dynamics all throughout the entire film. So you keep having the tension and the conflict, but it also keeps moving and growing as you go along. That just makes for a good, enjoyable thriller in general. Add to the mix, like when it does the big special effects shots of the water coming in and wiping out houses, it all works. Same with the alligators. You buy them. They look real, which I can't imagine that this film had a big CGI budget or that they were having actual alligators in a crawl space with people that were trained. But what they did worked inside of the film. Now, it's not a film I'm like, it's not amazing. It's not gonna be like a top 10 film of the year for me. But for what it's going for, if you're in the mood for kind of a thriller like this, it delivers the experience that it's supposed to. Then we've got Stuber. This is an action comedy with Dave Bautista and Kumail Nanjiani, and I had a great time with this film. Once again, this is a genre that I love. I love buddy films, action comedies. This one's more comedy than it is action. That's kind of on the front burner, the action's on the back burner. But when it goes into action mode, the action's handled quite well. There's even like shots inside of it of like Dave Bautista jumping off of a stairwell and it follows him down. There's a little bit of shaky cam and close up with some of the action, but it's done in a way where you can actually see what's happening. So it's not the bad version of that. It's not bad filmmaking. It's just a stylistic decision that they pulled off. Well, there's even a good car chase inside of the film that I really enjoyed. But comedy is on the front burner on this one, and it had me laughing the whole movie. And part of that is because it plays to each of the characters' strengths. So you have Dave Bautista playing this over-the-top alpha male cop in an action movie type character to the extreme of that. And then you have Kumail Nanjiani, the guy that's like, what are you doing, man? Why are you acting like this? Why are you being so over the top? And so they play into their types really well, have great chemistry with each other. The movie also has some meta humor about action comedy. So earlier in the film, Kumail Nanjiani's like cracking jokes like, oh, have you ever shot somebody? Have you ever done this? Have you ever done this? And then things like those are setups for jokes that happen later in the film. The big surprise here, though, is that inherent inside of the basic setup of the film is a bunch of physical comedy for Dave Bautista, and I thought all of it landed. Like, I mean, it's him running into walls and stuff like that, and things that you would think if I described them to you, you'd be like, really? You thought that was funny? But in the movie, in the setup of the film with what's happened right before, all of it paid off for me. I really enjoyed it. Now, I mean, it's a pretty generic buddy cop setup here. If there's an evil drug lord guy out there and two people that don't belong get together through shenanigans end up riding together on this adventure. So, I mean, it's not breaking any story ground here, but it delivered all the entertainment that I want from a film like this. Now, the one thing that was really annoying to me is they got Iko from The Raid, one of the best martial arts performers of the last 10 years, and they have him showing off again, having showdowns with Dave Bautista a couple times inside of the film. And I never felt like they fully captured how good that could have been of the wrestler versus the martial artist. They could have, because it showed him as really smooth, maybe like escape anything, but you didn't really get the vibe of Iko versus Batista, the definitive fight. You never got that vibe to it. And I wish they would have had a couple fights in the middle of it where he wasn't fighting Batista, but some other guys, just to like show off his thing. Put him against some stunt performers that are dressed as cops. They could have done some really nice stuff that they didn't end up doing with it. So a couple things like that annoyed me about it, but in general, very enjoyable. In third place is Spider-Man Far From Home. Of course, I'm a huge fan of the MCU, a big fan of Spider-Man, so another Spider-Man movie, I am all on board. This might be the funniest movie in the entire MCU. I mean, it's tough to compare comedy levels. I've thought about doing a ranking about that, so let me know if you want me to do that down below in the comment section. One of these days I probably will. So this might be the funniest film in the entire MCU, just a lot of different types of humor, and most of it lands. Jake Gyllenhaal just knocks it out of the park as Mysterio, and playing a character with a lot of different dynamics to the way he interacts with people and what the character has to kind of do inside of the film. There's some action sequences inside of this film that are some of the coolest stuff that we've seen in action sequences in a long time. I don't know, since Inception and since Doctor Strange, of just cool ways to visualize action and use CGI in a clever way to do things that you can't do practically. I'm intentionally not sharing too much because I know some people haven't seen the movie yet, including my wife, who might watch this video and has not seen Spider-Man yet, which has made it difficult for me to talk about movies at home. She hasn't seen Spider-Man yet. But I didn't love the film, though. I mean, very enjoyable, but it's just not top tier MCU for me. MCU is all very enjoyable for me. It's obviously not a bad placement on this list at all, but as funny as it is, I thought that the movie went too far with the comedy, that it undercut some of the drama, it undercut some of the credibility. Like when they try to do a spy movie with the film, but when they keep having there's 3 different sequences in the movie with Peter Parker like undressing in a room or something like that, and people keep running in. While there's something like he's putting on a costume, he's talking to someone important, or in the trailer they show him talking with Nick Fury, and people keep walking in the door 3 different times, which there's a certain laziness to repeating that same joke over and over again. But then if you're trying to do a spy movie about people trying to keep their disguises and everything, that just doesn't work. You lose all credibility when Nick Fury just doesn't care about any of this stuff. So that, like, things like that kind of pulled me out of the movie. And also, like, there's a bus sequence where Peter does something foolish with a piece of technology. I thought it just went too far with the ludicrousness of, they were like trying to set up a few plot points about how technology worked, as well as put a little gag inside the film there, and it just went too far. It just strained all credibility of like, wait, no, I don't, like, the whole concept of this film of why Peter has this technology, you just threw it out the window because you just demonstrated he's kind of a really irresponsible teenager, because he's a teenager. And that stuff kind of being so pivotal to the central plot line held it back for me. I know some of you guys love it, and you've been getting mad at me in the comments. How dare you not like it? And you'll probably do that again. But I mean, the whole MacGuffin plot line with the glasses and everything, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. So it's kind of a problem for a movie in general. But like I said, I gave it a very positive review. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's very rewatchable. I can't wait to take my kids and wife to see it. I just did have some significant problems with the film. July's runner-up is The Lion King, a movie that has been a lot more divisive than I was anticipating. And I guess at a certain point in time, people just kind of get tired of remakes, and we've hit that point with these Disney live-action remakes for some people. Well, I guess not at the box office. The movie's making an enormous amount of money, but for critics at least, a lot of people very underwhelmed by the film. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. First one, this might be the most direct adaptation that they've done yet, where Cinderella, Aladdin, they had adaptation, they added some new things into the mix. This one, I mean, there's so little added. There's so little. There's a couple extra jokes. There's this little Nala scene inside of it, and everything else, it's just very minor tweaks to like fill in a couple details in there, a couple extra lines of dialogue. But it's just The Lion King on the big screen, combined with the other problem along with this is that you lose the vibrance and emotion of The Lion King when they can't make big eyes, because lions don't make big eyes, and they can't make faces, they can't emote, because animals simply do not emote like humans. And you can do that with a cartoon, but you can't do it with photorealistic animals, because as soon as you do that, it stops looking photorealistic, and it just looks like very weird animated CGI type stuff that it just wouldn't fit. So I get where a lot of people are coming from. For me, it still touched all the right notes, hit all the right notes. Love the story of this one. Wowed by what they're able to do with the technology now. So as much as other people, I totally get where they're coming from and not liking this one. I mean, it worked for me. It's not like the best of the year type material. It's just a very solid adaptation. The analogy I used in my review was it's like a cover song. It's not a new song. It's not reinventing or reimagining the song. It's just a cover of it, but it's sung really well. And that's what this felt like. But my number one film for the month is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Quentin Tarantino is one of those filmmakers that no matter what he does, whether it's good or bad, it's always interesting. For me, this one landed on the both good and interesting side of things, or I guess both on the good and interesting side of things. I loved the characters. I loved the finale. And I as I've thought about it, I just loved being in this environment of where it creates. The movie's basically his love letter to 1960s Hollywood and his attempt to recreate a bunch of the stuff from that time period that meant to a bunch to him. So whether TV show, kind of the style of how they would do commercial breaks, the way they would do commercials, sequences inside of films, some of the people from the 60s make appearances inside of it. And so it's a movie that it's not really story driven in so much. It's not like there's this clear conflict that we're trying to come over. You know, Django Unchained, it's very clear that what his objective is throughout the film. And you've succeeded in the story when certain people have been taken out and certain people have been rescued. It's not like that at all. It's much more just about these characters being in this environment. And then it kind of all the pieces come together towards the end for this big, insane Quentin Tarantino finale. And so for me, the reason it worked is because I did enjoy these characters so much, their interactions, and just being there in these scenarios. I just enjoyed the playing around in the playground or watching Quentin Tarantino play around in this playground a little bit, it just worked for me. I can totally understand why some people would see that and be like, it's meandering, it's boring, it's so much dialogue, it's pretentious, it's self-indulgent. Fair enough. Not all movies are for everybody. This was one that I watched and I was like, I just enjoy being here. A little bit towards, 60% of the movie when it was transitioning from the second act to the third act or late second act, I started to have a little bit of like, okay, let's get to it. And then it paid off so well for me that it kind of fixed any sort of mountain where I thought it was dragging a little bit. The payoff at the end was so good to me that it absolutely worked. And what I loved about the payoff is that there are all these pieces sprinkled all throughout the whole movie that work in and of themselves, like little plot lines about Leonardo DiCaprio's character, little details about Cliff Booth, Brad Pitt's characters. They just tell us little things about them. They work in and of themselves, but they tie together, but though you don't immediately notice at the time, and then they pay off so well when combined together in the third act of the film that I just loved the way that this film ended. So for me, I loved the characters. I loved the world. The payoff was so good. So it comes in at number 1. Remember, you can pick up my merch at that link down below in the description. Also, if you want more content from me, there's an amazing video right there. Now, I don't know what video that they're recommending for you, so I could be lying. They could have recommended one of my worst videos to you. So sorry about that if that happened, but it's probably mind-blowingly good. So check that one out right over there. Thank you so much for watching and keep talking movies too much.